It's Kyle here, and today I'll be reviewing the finale of the High Republic series with the book Trials of the Jedi by Charles Soule. So I'll be doing this review a little bit different than my typical book review, since this is the last book of a huge series that's been going over for 5 years now. The first part of my review will be spoiler-free, just give my overall thoughts on the book, just general stuff like that. Then I'll give you a warning, and I'll be getting into the spoiler aspects of the book. So if you haven't read the book yet and you plan to, you should be fine watching the first few minutes of this review. Then I'll give you a warning like, hey, now I'm getting into specific plot details. Maybe only go past this point if you've actually read the book. So that warning out of the way, let's get started talking about Trials of the Jedi by Charles Soule. So I have absolutely loved the High Republic series. Anybody that's been a fan of this channel and watched all my reviews in the past few years knows that the High Republic series is one of my favorite things Star Wars has done in a long time. Love this so much. I was somewhat excited but also dreading the end of the series. I know they'll tell more stories set in the High Republic era, but this is specifically the end of the series, and this has been such a huge part of my Star Wars fandom for the past 5 years. All the books I've read. It's going to be somewhat bittersweet to see the series end. A lot like Andor just wrapping up after 2 seasons, and how amazing Andor was, and you knew the ending was coming, and you knew it needed to end, obviously based on the storyline, but it was still like oh, this is so awesome, I'm going to miss it. Again, I know we're getting more stories in the High Republic era, but it's no guarantee that the stories will be as good as it was in the specific series. I'm optimistic, but you just never know. They've really knocked a home run with this series, and so I was somewhat disappointed or sad to see the series come in, even though I know it needed to come to an end. And I really enjoyed the aspect when they set up to start the series. They had a plan in place, like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to, aim for these 3 phases, and, we have an end game in mind. And I very much appreciate that, where sometimes you read book series and you can tell they have no idea how they're going to wrap it up, which is why sometimes you never get the last book in the series sometimes. Overall, Trials of the Jedi, I think, did a really good job of wrapping up this series. Is this my favorite book in the High Republic series? No. I think there's some other ones I enjoyed a little bit more. In fact, now with the end of Phase 3, I think Phase 1 of the High Republic series is going to end up being my favorite. I really enjoyed Phase 3. I thought this book did an amazing job of wrapping up Phase 3 in the overall series, but overall not my favorite book in the series. Definitely up there, top tier, but not quite my favorite. I think with how many storylines and characters that this series has been juggling, it was going to be very hard for one book to really wrap up everything. I think everybody kind of accepts, like, all right, not every character is going to be able to get a starring role in this series. There's probably going to be some storylines that not everybody is going to be satisfied with how it was addressed or how much time was dedicated towards it. And I think there's going to be some people who will definitely have that feeling about this book. And from my point, there's some parts that I agree with as well. Like everybody has their own favorite characters. I ain't going in. There's no way they're going to be able to give every single character a huge amount of time. There's going to be some featured characters and some secondary and even some third to background characters. And there were a couple characters that I really have loved in the High Republic series that I would have loved to see very much be a featured, top tier character in this book, that were relegated either to second tier or third tier characters for this specific storyline. And there were some characters that were in the first tier of this book that were getting a lot of feature that maybe weren't necessarily always my favorite characters in the series. Like, there's no way they were going to be able to really pull off that where, like, everybody's going to be satisfied with that. Obviously, everybody has different favorite characters and characters they dislike. So I think in the end, the characters they picked to be a big part of the conclusion of the storyline made sense for the most part. There was one character I felt like the role that character played in the course of that series maybe should have been featured a little bit more in this, and a couple of other characters I would have liked to see a little bit more bigger aspect of it. I will say the action in this book is really well done. There's a very amazing battle scene over the planet Eridu that was really well done. Enjoyed it a lot. The Jedi storylines really get a lot of attention. I think we become a better understanding of how the Force works in this era and how the Jedi view it and how their viewing of the Force has changed over the course of the events. By the end of this book, we get a very clear picture of how the Republic has changed, and from this golden age, how the stuff that happened in this era is going to, some way lead to the fall of the Republic under Palpatine. Some aspects of the book that I would have liked maybe a little bit more attention. One thing I really enjoyed about the High Republic series, in a lot of cases, the Jedi were not the only ones solving issues. The Jedi were heavily involved, but you would also have like scientists, individuals, politicians, soldiers who were playing a very big role in also fighting the Nihil and trying to save the galaxy, trying to save the Republic. And I feel like in this book, probably as the name suggests, Trials of the Jedi, the main focus is the Jedi, and like the non-Jedi characters are really not getting a whole lot of storyline in this book, and that was maybe one of my complaints. I would have liked to see a little bit more on the Republic side of like how some of those individuals we were following throughout this series, how they played a bigger role in the successful conclusion of this conflict. That didn't quite play out. I will say also, when I got this book, knowing how much they had time, I was kind of expecting. I purposely not looked into to see if they'd released a page count, so I didn't know how big the book was until I picked it up. I was kind of expecting, with how much they had to wrap up, that like this book was going to be 700-800, close to 1,000 pages. Wasn't that? It was kind of this typical size for a High Republic adult novel, a little over 400 pages. I think the book could have benefited for maybe at least another 100 to 200 pages. I think there's some moments that maybe a little bit more extra attention could have gave to, but at the end, I think there's no way the author could have really wrapped up everything and made everybody happy. I think it could have been 600 pages, and I think a lot of people would have read it and like, I think they could have used another 100 pages. In reality, I think everybody's thinking like, we don't want this series to end in a lot of ways. We actually want more books set in this series, which is why I'm glad they are going to be telling more stories in the High Republic era. So overall, I really enjoyed this book. Again, not my favorite book in the High Republic series, but I didn't dislike it either. If I'm ranking it on a scale from 1 to 10, this might fall somewhere in that 8.5 range. I think compared to a lot of other series I've read, this book did a really good job of wrapping this series up. There's been so many series I absolutely love, and when I get to the last book, it's like, I'm not really happy how this series ended. Even though I wasn't a super big fan of every single aspect of this book, I was a fan of a lot of it. And even the stuff I didn't quite buy into, I still felt like I wrapped up the series in a satisfactory means. So overall, enjoyed the book and thought it did a really good job of wrapping up the High Republic series. And so with that spoiler-free thoughts on the book, now I'm going to get into more specific plot details. So if you have not read this book yet, I recommend stopping now and coming back and watching this part of the review later after you've read Trials of the Jedi. All right, this is the last warning. I'm now talking about specific stuff. So if you're not ready to hear about the specific details of Trials of the Jedi, stop watching now. And I'm going to be talking about this book a lot, so I know it's usually my tradition I hold my book up the entire time. I'm not going to do that, because I might be actually referencing some stuff on the inside, so dropping the book now. The basic setup of this book is the Jedi have determined their final plan of action to try to defeat the Nihil, to try to defeat Marchion Ro, to try to stop the Blight, to try to stop the Nameless. And really stopping the Blight is the most important thing, because they realize they can defeat the Nihil, but the Blight's not stopped. It's going to destroy the entire galaxy, and what's the point? The Jedi basically come to the conclusion that the Nameless and the Blight are connected, and they've developed the theory that the way to stop the Blight is to take the Nameless back to their home planet, which we learned in Phase 2 is a planet they call Planet X. So the Jedi, over the course of Phase 3, have been capturing Nameless to try to learn more about them, how they could combat them. So they currently have 12 in their possession. And so they've developed a plan that they think if they can get these Nameless back to their home planet, that will help to stop the spread of the Blight. So 9 Jedi are selected for this mission. 9 Jedi are kind of selected to be a backup part of the mission. So you have those 18 Jedi that are, kind of a big part of this storyline. The first 9 are really the main characters of this book. The second team gets a little bit of action, but not really a whole lot, so they're very much more background characters. And in fact, there's one moment which a character I would have loved to see more in the book, because she was one of my favorite characters, Ernesta Ro, expresses frustration at being on the second team and feels like she should be on the first team, and that should really be where she should be. And she has a really great discussion with another Jedi, basically talking like, don't you understand? Every Jedi thinks they should be on Team 1, but we all have our role to play, and you are very important, and that's why we're putting you on Team 2, because if something goes wrong with Team 1, you're one of the few people that we think can actually then actually solve the issue. That if Team 1 fails, we're going to really need some strong Jedi to actually salvage the situation, and you're being trusted with that responsibility. I wonder if some ways that entire dialogue was put there to also address readers who had certain Jedi that they were fans of, like, I really wish this character was on Team 1, and basically going like, hey, not everybody can be on Team 1, but they all have important roles to play in defeating the Nile, defeating the Blight, and addressing the Nameless issue. A very cool aspect of this plan is, like, the Jedi have developed this armor that can kind of negate the impact of the Nameless a little bit on the Jedi. So the Jedi are crafted with these really cool armor to kind of help them be around the Nameless and to navigate back to Planet X to put the Nameless on this planet. I thought that was a really cool, fun story aspect. In some ways, I wonder if that kind of is the germ of, like, the Jedi starting to wear armor. So when we get to the Clone Wars, the Jedi are wearing armor during conflict and stuff like that. But just a little random theory on my part. Beyond this mission back to Planet X, the other big aspect of the storyline is Eriadu, which is on the other side of the exclusion zone. And the last time the storm wall had expanded, a lot of the Republic military got stuck on the other side of the storm wall. And basically their plan had been, like, if that happens, go to this planet and develop a plan to how to rebel. And so basically we learned that the government and the leadership of Eriadu and the Republic Defense forces have basically been in hiding on the planet, waiting for the right moment to rebel against the Nile, and kind of trying to lull the Nile into think they've actually conquered the planet, and then basically using this when they think the moment's right, launching this rebellion, freeing and liberating Eriadu, and maybe kind of using that as a bastion of freedom in Nile space, and maybe starting the process to defeat the Nile. So we're getting that aspect of it. I kind of would have enjoyed a little bit more of this storyline. It was a big part of the book for a little bit, but then it kind of wrapped up, and then we didn't really see as much throughout the rest of the book. The last phase of the book really is just focusing on the Jedi and Planet X. With the Battle of Eriadu, how it plays out is very interesting. Basically, you get this really cool scene where the citizens of Eriadu are tired of waiting and basically launch the rebellion without the leadership's permission, because they're like, hey, we're tired of living with the Nile. We have to fight back. The conflict between the Nile and the rebellion on Eriadu was very intense, very bloody, and went back and forth. We really weren't sure how it was going to play out. How it ended up and wrapped up a key moment in Eriadu, the rebellion kind of being successful, is the storm wall comes down. The storm wall has obviously been this huge part of the story for a while that's been dividing Republic space and Nile space, and the Republic can't get across it. And basically, they've been so focused on trying to take the storm wall down. Eventually, they've concluded the only way to do it is to destroy Mark Onro's ship, the Gaze Electric. But they don't even know where that ship is. So the entire time you're reading this, like, how is this going to happen? How are they going to get the storm wall down? Because we know from references in some other books in this phase, the storm wall has come down. We never are told how. This is a moment I think some people are going to have an issue with. I had a little bit of issue with it, and we basically learned that Mark Onro actually takes the storm wall down himself. He's basically reached the conclusion that he's not happy. You know, he's kind of achieved all his goals. He's kind of dominated a huge section of the galaxy. He's been a conqueror. He's done everything that he kind of set out to do with the Nile, and he realized he's got to this point, and he's just not happy. So then he kind of develops this plan with the Blight of, like, I'll be the person that solves the issue of the Blight, and everybody will remember my name. I'll be the most famous person in history. But he realizes when this plan doesn't work out, that wouldn't keep him happy. And he kind of develops this theory. It's like, there's been other great conquerors. There's been other villains, other monsters. I could be the first person and the only person ever to do one specific thing, and that is to destroy all life in the galaxy. And basically, he's reached the same conclusion the Jedi does, that the Nameless are the key to the Blight. So basically, he develops a plan. If I kill all the Nameless, the Blight will spread uncontrollably. The Jedi will have no way to stop it. Now I'll kill everybody in the galaxy, including myself, and I can die happy. So he also heads to Planet X, because he also is kind of like the Jedi's also figured this out. I'm going to get to Planet X too and try to stop them and then kill all the Nameless. But I think at this point he kind of reverts back to what we saw in Phase 1, where he is kind of all about chaos. It's like, all right, now that I've reached this conclusion that I am going to destroy the galaxy, I don't really care what happens. I don't care if the Nile lose. I'm just going to take the storm all down because I think that will cause more chaos. And that's what I'm all about, chaos and death. So he destroys his own ship and takes the storm all down, which from his character's logic, I think makes sense. I think the thing that some people are going to be a little disappointed with or frustrated by is like taking the storm all down has been such a big part of so many missions throughout this phase. And in the end, none of those missions actually mattered. And, you know, the Jedi were never able to figure out a way, or the Republic were never able to figure out a way to take the storm all down. In the end, it was just Mark on roll taking it down, basically just because she was bored and frustrated. Which again, I think it makes sense from that character's point of view, but I think it would have been more satisfactory if the Republic or the Jedi had been able to take the storm all down. And especially, I would have loved it if it had been like a scientific breakthrough, because a huge part of the storyline is the Jedi and figuring out with the Force of how to stop the Blight once they get to Planet X and how to save the Nameless. We don't really get too much on the Republic side of like how they contributed to the defeat of the Nile, other than the military battle on Eridu. Republic scientists and this science in general was a huge part of this entire storyline. So I would love the aspect if we'd had a Republic scientist that would have had this big breakthrough, like I finally have figured out how to take this storm all down. And maybe even Mark Hamill was even thinking of taking it down himself. Maybe we get the aspect of him, but the Republic beats him to the punch and takes it down, the storm all on their own. I think that would have been a better way to maybe wrap up this entire focus we've had on science, the entire point of view, because in the end, the science that we've been exploring never really played a factor. You know, they were doing all the scientific exploration to try to figure out how to stop the Blight. That didn't happen. How to stop the Nameless. That didn't happen. How to take the storm all down. That didn't happen. It would have been nice if there had been one big victory for science in this storyline. I think the storm all would have been the one that maybe made the most sense for. Going back to Eridu, once the storm all downs, the entire Republic military is basically able to converge on the planet and basically trap the bulk of the Nile military there and start destroying it. And then we get one of the cooler moments in the book, and I was so happy that he showed back up. We get the return of Porter Engle, because he's there to kill the general of the Nile that has been his thorn in his side for over 150 years, that took his sister away from him. And the combat that Porter Engle does to get to the Nile command ship is absolutely amazing. It's some of the coolest stuff we've ever seen a Jedi do before. Definitely, that might have been my favorite part of the book from an action standpoint. When he gets to the general's command ship, how he gets on the ship is amazing. I love the moment when he gets on the ship comm and basically says, like, if anybody thinks of trying to stop me getting from the general's dead, basically. If anybody tries to stop me from accomplishing that, you're dead too. If you don't try to stop me, you're free to go. I'm only here for the general, which is maybe one of the more intense speeches a Jedi's ever gave in Star Wars history. And then the confrontation between Porter and the general on the command ship, room was amazing. Basically, when you get there, we know they've dueled several times in the past, and the general's very cocky, like, hey, you've never been able to defeat me before. What makes you think you're going to do it this time? And basically is like, I've realized I was never able to kill you because you're one of the few links I have to my sister. And when you're dead, that means there'll be one less person in the galaxy left who remembers my sister. But I finally came to peace with that. And you're going to die, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. And then he basically shows her that and very, very quickly defeats her. And so we realizes we've been so impressed with how powerful Porter Engle is in this earlier aspects of this storyline. We realize we've never actually seen Porter Engle at full 100% power because he's been holding himself back. And when we see him at 100% power, you realize, you know, he might be the most powerful Jedi warrior in history. It's absolutely amazing. And I'm hoping we get more aspects of Porter Engle's storyline in the High Republic era, because he does make it through the end of the story. So I'd be very interested to see what else we get with Porter Engle, both going forward in the future and maybe some prequel stuff with his storyline, because he seems like a character that I think a lot of people are going to want to know more about. Like I said, that moment Porter Engle is my favorite combat moment. Maybe my favorite emotional moment in this storyline is with Torben Buck. Now, I'll say this character development and storyline around Torben Buck kind of really surprised me. Buckets of blood, basically the Jedi medic, the Jedi healer, definitely played a big role throughout the series. He was never one of my favorite characters. I didn't dislike him. There's some of the Jedi characters I never connected with. There were some of the characters who were some of my favorite, like Porter Ingorn, Vernestra Rowe, or Bell, or Reef were some of my favorites. Torben kind of fell in the middle. I was like, I kind of enjoyed his character. I never really were getting more of him, but I was never one. He wasn't in the storyline. You know who I like more of? Torben. I wish Torben was around, but he gets an amazing aspect of the storyline, and the emotional moment with him is, wow, it was a gut punch. Basically, he was initially supposed to be on Team 2, but during the loading of the Nameless, one of the members of Team 1 is severely injured, and it was a Wookiee Jedi, and basically Torben is the only person on Team 2 who is big enough to actually fit into armor of the Team 1 member who can no longer go. And basically there's not time to build new armor, so Torben basically gets thrust into Team 1, but he does volunteer for it and realizes, like, I need to be here. Maybe this is what's meant to be. And you're definitely getting stuff with Torben that he's been so frustrated as this Jedi healer and Jedi medic, that stuff with the Nameless, stuff with the Blight, how it's been killing people. He's been so powerless to stop it. And he just wants to save life. When we get to Planet X, we have this amazing confrontation with the Nine getting there, and Mark Yonro is basically there waiting for them. So he's there with all the Nameless he has, and basically he's able to take control of all the Nameless. And instead of sicking them on the Jedi, he basically orders the Nameless to kill each other. And the Jedi are terrified, and they don't know what to do, because they know their job was to save the Nameless, get them back to Planet X. If the Nameless die, the Blight might destroy the entire galaxy. So the Jedi then are trying to save the Nameless. And basically there's a moment with Torben's faced with the choice of trying to either save another Jedi or save a Nameless, and he actually tries to save the Nameless and basically sacrifices his life to try to keep this Nameless alive. And in the end you realize he chooses life over destruction. He really is a true Jedi. He won't embrace the dark side. He fights for light. He fights for life until the very end, and he stays true to being a healer. And it is such a gut punch when he is killed doing this. But even then he realizes, I'm going to die doing this, but this is what I was meant to do, what I was put in the Jedi Order for. I'm being true to my Jedi self, and I have no regrets. It was such a powerful and moving moment, and it really had a profound impact on the other Jedi. It was such a beautiful moment, and maybe my favorite moment in the entire book. From this aspect of the storyline, Mark Yonro basically leaves the Jedi and all right, y'all are done. I'm going off to kill all the other Nameless on this planet, so the Blight will destroy everything. So you have some Jedi that go after Mark Yonro, Bell and Briarga, and basically Ember is going on that mission. You also have other Jedi are going after Aslan Rel, who's a part of the team, but once he gets here, he kind of goes crazy, and he steals the rod that the Jedi need to basically take control of the Nameless away from Mark Yonro. And then you also have basically just trying to figure out what's going on here. And so Elzar and Avar basically go on this mission to kind of figure out what's going on this planet and what they can do to stop it. Their love story becomes a huge aspect of this story. They very much are partners in the Force. They fully embrace their love for each other. The other Jedi are very aware of it at this point. It's very much an open secret. And how their storyline wraps up is absolutely beautiful. They learn more about Planet X, learn that the Nameless are what controls the Blight. And every time a Nameless is killed, an egg is actually formed and eventually will have to hatch a new Nameless. But they learn that this process will take decades, and so they can't wait that long for the Nameless to be born to replace the Nameless that have been killed to stop the Blight. And so Elzar and Avar, I'm not even going to try to explain fully how it happened because it's very hard to explain. You get very much into the philosophy of the Force. Elzar and Avar basically reach the conclusion that they have to stay on Planet X together, kind of apart. And basically Avar used her connection to the light side, and Elzar used his connection to the dark side, and balance the Force on Planet X, which will enable the Blight to be stopped and to be defeated. And how they basically decide, we're sacrificing our love for each other. We will no longer be able to be with each other but will still be connected through the Force by bringing balance to the Force. And maybe this is what our love was meant to do, bring us together so we'd be able to make this connection, because nobody has a connection to the Force like these two individuals because of their love. And so they recently, the Force brought us together so we could do this and save the galaxy. So amazing moment with them. The moment with Bell confronting Mark Monroe is really powerful as well, because you basically have him get in this fight with Mark Monroe, and basically him flirting with the dark side, and basically like nearly falling to the dark side to defeat Mark Monroe, because he still has so much hatred in his heart for Mark Monroe killing his master, and he's just not willing to accept it. But in a beautiful moment, a Force ghost of his master comes to him and basically, this is not you, but you can defeat him with the power of the Force. And like several moments we've seen throughout Jedi storylines in the past, it's almost like all the power of the Jedi flow into Bell so he can defeat Mark Monroe. And there's an amazing moment Mark Monroe realizes, like, I never really fully understood how powerful the Jedi are until this moment. And so when Bell defeats him, he basically throws him off a cliff, going back to phase 1 when his master was training him how to use the Force. And he would throw him off the cliff and basically try to train him to use the Force, how to save himself. And Bell faces this choice, and now I've defeated Mark Monroe, I've thrown him off the cliff. I can easily just let him die, but that would be the dark side. So he saves him. He lets him get hurt really bad, so not fully good. He lets him take a little bit of, I should say a lot of punishment, basically get a lot of bones broken, but he does save his life, because he's like, it's not my job to kill you. I've already defeated you. It's now to bring you back to justice. And really, Bell, reconnecting and reaffirming his connection to the light side of the Force. A very cool moment in that aspect as well. Everything that went on in Planet X was very interesting. You get Team 2 that shows up right at the end to kind of rescue Team 1 who's been stranded on it. I would say a disappointment I had in the book is, when you set up this Team 1, Team 2 aspect, I thought Team 2 at some point would play a little bit bigger role, but at the end they didn't really play. By the time they get to Planet X, Team 1 has already won, and all they need Team 2 is basically just to pick them up and take them off Planet X. So basically just almost like their pickup ride. So I would have loved a little bit of some aspect of the storyline, maybe not even on Planet X, maybe to get to Planet X, Team 2 had to do something. It could have been nice to get them a little bit, maybe a little bit of a B plot built around them. And we didn't really get much of that. So that was maybe one of my complaints. I would have loved to see some of the characters in Team 2, like for Nesta Rowe, get a bigger moment to shine in this book that she just didn't really get. So a little bit with Team 2 would have been awesome. Still maybe the main focus on Team 1, but a little bit more for Team 2 would have been really nice as well. A quick little, conclusion of like where the galaxy is at this point. The Nile surrendered, because without Mark Monroe, the Storm all going on, they did basically just completely fall apart. But this isn't going to be an easy process. You have all the planets that were destroyed by the Nile, that were destroyed by the Blight. You have some planets that now have experienced a little freedom from the Republic, and maybe they want to stay independent. Maybe we're seeing the seed of the Separatist movement here. We also get some Nile warlords that are made clear they're still kind of ruling some individual planets. So we get to see like the Republic are trying to stitch the galaxy back together, but there's a long way to go. And we kind of get the feeling like this is never fully accomplished, and maybe this sets up a lot of the political issues that we see when the prequel movies happen of why the galaxy is so divided, that maybe the galaxy was never fully brought back together after all the violence that the Nile wrought on the galaxy. We also get a really cool moment in the Republic Senate where we get the trial of Mark Monroe, and he gives a little speech, basically it's like, y'all mean nothing. It takes all of y'all to bring the Republic back together and rule the galaxy. I was able to destroy it just by myself. Y'all are nothing compared to me. But obviously he's convicted, and his punishment is really interesting. They don't sentence him to death. They basically sentence him to solitary confinement for the rest of his life. And they develop this like cool little prison for just him, with only droids guarding him on like an asteroid that gets hollowed out, and he basically is in this asteroid the rest of his life. And like we get a little pages of what his life is like in this prison, and how it basically beats him down, and how in reality it was the perfect punishment for this brutal individual. And the end is what's like the galaxy basically forgets about him, which is in reality what he wanted to be remembered. That was almost the best punishment for him. We also get a kind of a moment with the Republic Chancellor, as she's kind of in her head like, now the violence is over. It's my job to bring it back together. But in her mind, she kind of has realized, what everybody in the galaxy believed the Republic could, the Nile basically destroyed. And I don't know if that can ever be brought back. Basically exposed the faults. What didn't work with the Republic that maybe nobody were aware of until the Nile exposed it. And she basically almost like, this is maybe, I'm going to try my best to fix it. I'm not sure if it'll be possible to. And we basically, for Star Wars fans, know it's not possible. We know, like, people lose faith with the Republic. And by the time the prequels come on, it's basically started the Civil War, and it's never able to fully brought back together. And Palpatine is able to take advantage of everything that the Nile did to kind of continue to build on and fully break apart the galaxy that will allow him to rise as the Sith Lord, as the Emperor, establishing the Galactic Empire. So overall, I think the High Republic series did an amazing job of showing like what the Republic was like at its height and why it began to decline that allowed the Clone Wars and the rise of the Empire to happen. Was the series perfect? No. But it was very close to perfect. I absolutely love this series, and I'm looking forward to the day when I have some time to actually go back and reread a lot of books in this series. Now that I kind of know how the series wraps up, and if there's some elements of the earlier books that I'll even enjoy more, knowing how the storyline, how the characters will develop. But I'm going to wrap this review up. I know this is a really, really long review, a lot longer than I typically do. I have a lot more thoughts I would love to share about this book that I'm just kind of forgetting at the moment. I could probably talk an hour or two just about this book. If anybody wants to do a live show talking about this book and about the series in general, just contact me. I'll be glad to do something on this channel or come on your channel. I could talk about the High Republic series forever. This was amazing. Trials of the Jedi did a really good job of wrapping this series up. It's so hard to wrap up a long series. This book could have completely failed, and it did it. It really brought the series together in a way that's going to make most people happy. So kudos to everybody involved in the High Republic series, all the authors, everybody involved in the Star Wars creative side that made this series so successful, so interesting, so amazing. I absolutely loved it. I hope you enjoyed this very long review. If you did, please hit that like button. If you haven't, please subscribe to the channel. I mean, if you watch the video this long and you're not subscribed to the channel, what are you doing? Please subscribe. Again, thanks for watching. I'll see you the next time, and may the Force be with you.